Alright, we've had quite a few reveals for Legacy and Studio Series, and there's quite a bit to talk about here, so let's dig in. Let's start off with Legacy, since that's what was revealed first. Commander Class Magmatron, fully revealed, and I think this guy looks so good, man. I've watched Beast Wars Neo, and I think the show itself is okay. I remember liking Magmatron a good bit from his design to just him as a character, and I think this figure looks great. The robot mode is awesome. Of course, the colors look weird, but that's just sort of Magmatron's thing. He has his sword, which is pretty cool. I think everything looks fantastic in the robot mode. There's really not too much to complain about. He's also pretty damn big. There's a picture of him holding Legacy Leo Prime, Lao Convoy, and he is a hell of a lot bigger than him. Then there's his alternate modes. There's the Giganotosaurus, the the big pterodactyl, and of course the plesiosaurus. I think they all look okay. Maybe not fantastic or anything. I think the plesiosaurus is the odd one out, mostly just because of the hollow bits on the neck. Hollow parts don't usually bug me, but those do kind of stick out, so that's a bit iffy, but otherwise I don't mind the dinosaur modes. Overall, Magmatron is a definite buy for me. I've liked all of the Commander class figures I've gotten. The only one I don't have is Legacy Motormaster, but I do enjoy that's kind of going back to being a big character instead of just a smaller character with a trailer like the past few figures have been, even though Rodimus is pretty good and Armada Prime is one of the best mainline toys in years. But still, this is pretty cool. Very hyped for this. Looks awesome. Then revealed along with Magmatron is the Stranger Things x Transformers collaboration Code Red. He turns into the Surfer Boy pizza van, and I dig this guy. He looks pretty cool. The color isn't necessarily my favorite or anything, but obviously it works here. And going off of the pictures, it looks like Code Red is going to be a heavy remold or has shared engineering with the Earthrise Ironhide and Ratchet mold, and I'm not the biggest fan of that mold, and it's not even because of the parts forming. So that has me a little iffy on this guy, but overall I think this is cool. The robot mode looks good, the van mode looks good. The fact that it comes in the Surfer Boy pizza box is pretty neat. He has a pizza blaster, a blast effect, what looks like an axe, a bat, and the cool thing about the box is that it really is made to look like a pizza box on the inside too. Got the pizza in there along with grease marks, and even the accessories will come in the wrapping like figures have been lately, but it's supposed to look like a Surfer Boy napkin. I think that's pretty neat. If I end up going for this one, it's one that I would actually be tempted to keep the box. So overall, I think this is a pretty impressive set, especially with the box and everything. I like Stranger Things. Obviously, I like Transformers, so I'm not going to say this is a must buy, but it's definitely caught my eye at the very least. Moving on to Studio Series, we got a couple core figures, a couple deluxe, and a leader figure. Starting off with the big one, since I am of course a Michael Bay Transformers fan. They're doing core class The Last Night Mohawk, and at first I wasn't too big on this guy, if I'm being completely honest. Mohawk to me is kind of an character. I don't mind him, but I'm not the biggest fan of the design. His personality was very just whatever to me. Plus I got the Dr. Wu third party figure that's sort of a core class legend scale figure, and I thought that one was good enough for what he was. But I think this guy, just in terms of movie accuracy, blows that one out of the water. I think it's pretty impressive what they were able to do with Mohawk here. He looks great in the robot mode. He even has the little extra bits of the green paint across the chest and everything, which I think is pretty damn cool. The motorcycle mode looks about as good as it can. So Mohawk for me is definitely a must get. Gotta show support for the base stuff. Of course, I'd love if the Studio Series got hashtag back to basics, and it's very cool to see this happening. Next, there is Bumblebee movie Rumble. Now, of course, this confuses me because this is the blue one, so of course it should be Frenzy. But this, along with the leader Megatron that we'll get to later, is labeled as concept art. Although the funny thing is, as far as we know, unless a Instagram behind the scenes post clarifies anything, this didn't actually have concept art. They just kind of made this design to go with the existing figures. And I mean, this looks okay, I suppose. I'm not really into it. There is part of me that is kind of tempted to get it just to put with Soundwave and Ravage. One thing I will say though, I do like the head sculpt. Something about the faceplate on this works, and I'm kind of a sucker for faceplates in general. I guess he looks like the cassette dudes in the Bumblebee movie style, sort of. And of course, he just kind of turns into a nondescript block. And I mean, Ravage had the same issue, but I guess I feel like it's especially egregious here. I don't know. It's not the biggest deal at the end end of the day, there's not much else it could really do, but this definitely is the one that I have to get. Like I said, he would look good with the Studio Series, Bumblebee movie, Soundwave, and Ravage, but at the moment, this one's not really doing it for me. Moving on up to the two deluxes, they are both from Rise of the Beasts, and first up there is Scorponok, and I actually like this Scorponok a lot, especially in the Scorpion mode, which is of course the one form that they were in the movie, and I really do think that it nailed it. It looks pretty damn cool. I like this a lot. I definitely wouldn't mind maybe getting two of these to sort of have a little bit of an army builder thing going on. The robot mode I definitely feel doesn't look as good, but hey, they kind of just had to come up with something, even though there have been concept designs of Scorponok that we've seen. I don't immediately recall if this is based off of any of those concept designs. I haven't compared them side by side. For what the robot mode is, it works, but of course the main selling point for this would be the Scorpion mode, and I think it nails it. I'm really hyped for that. Next up is Rise of the Beast Wheeljack, and I think he looks awesome. Sorry guys, I'm calling him Wheeljack because, like it or not, he is a version of Wheeljack. I think this figure does the design justice. Whether or not you like the design is one thing, I don't mind it really. My biggest issues with the robot mode are that the door wings are actually facing the opposite way of what they should be. Like, we're seeing the backs of the doors instead of the front, and of course looking at them, that would also mean that the doors would have to switch sides. So maybe that was just an engineering challenge for them. I don't really know. We'll see in hand. Maybe there's a way to change it, possibly. So that's a little odd to me. I mean, I can overlook it a little bit, I guess, since at the end of the day it's still the wings on the back, but I don't know, it looks a little odd. And then the forearms do definitely seem a little chunky, especially the one here in the picture with the white panel just kind of chilling there. I can definitely foresee that being something that I'm not really bothered by in hand though. I'm not really a fan of the transparent gun either, especially since why doesn't he have the arm cannons that he had in the movie? Probably sounds like I'm bitching a lot here because I actually do like Wheeljack. I think everything else looks pretty good to great on him. And of course this means we'll finally be able to complete the Autobot cast from Rise of the Beast in Studio Series. And then there's the van mode, and I mean, there's not too much to say. Like, don't get me wrong, it looks good. It's just a brown and white van. I don't know. What's kind of neat to me though is that they have the van on the front of the box art where they usually have, like, you know, the robot mode. So I find that pretty interesting. Maybe it's just to help show off the licensing since this is a officially licensed Volkswagen van. And hey, there was some mention in the stream about licensing with the van. Part of me is like, was it something to do with the van for the Stranger Things collab, or are they maybe referencing Dreadbot from the last night since he was a Volkswagen van as well? Who knows? But yeah, I think this mode's fine. So I definitely have my issues with Wheeljack, but I'm still fairly excited for him. Moving on up to the Voyagers, we have the Studio Series 86 Scrap Heap, and it's another Junkion. That's really about all I have to say about that. It looks okay. I might get it if I see it at a discount place like I did with Junk Heap. Otherwise, I'm really not interested in this guy. And then there's the Studio Series Gamer Edition War for Cybertron Starscream, and this guy has caused quite the discussion within the fandom. Now, I'll go ahead and just be honest. I don't mind the look of this guy for the most part. Am I gonna get it? I'll probably give it a chance, yeah. But he's definitely flawed, and man, it just kind of sucks this has turned out the way that it has. I do think that the robot mode, for the most part, is okay. The leg proportions are kind of iffy, but it's really, of course, the chest. The chest is just way too big, specifically the cockpit. It just throws everything off. It's really not accurate in either mode, but especially not in the robot mode. It's just real unfortunate, man. I do think that looking past game accuracy, now that is part of the thing with Studio Series and Gamer Editions, but looking past that, I do think that as a figure, it looks alright. Articulation looks pretty good. The robot mode, just as is, I think looks fine. The cockpit really is just an eyesore any way you slice it, but not to mention it's made out of that soft rubber-like plastic. Just come on, guys. He still has the replace the whole arm with the weapon gimmick, and he has his mace type weapon, and it looks okay. It kind of has the same issues that the mace weapon that the Megatron had. Looks a little iffy, and of course it looks funny just being held by the end of the handle like that. This guy certainly has issues. I'm a little iffy on it, but I think the robot mode's okay. Then the jet form, I think the jet form actually looks pretty good. The biggest thing that people seem to complain about with it are, again, the cockpit size. I feel like it's a bit better here in jet mode, mode. I don't know what it is. It just doesn't seem to bother me quite as much. But then there's the size of the wings, and I think this mostly comes from the fact that this is meant to represent the sort of floating or standard mode of the jet form from the game, instead of when he uses the thrusters and goes fast. But yeah, I actually dig the look of the jet mode here. It looks pretty solid, and I don't mind this. So yeah, overall, Starcream is certainly looking flawed here. I really hope he's pretty solid in hand. I'll be able to look past most things, but just, I don't know, I do feel like he is kind of fighting an uphill battle. Then moving on to the last reveal, there is Bumblebee movie Megatron. He also has the concept art labeled that Rumble does, and I'm so split on this because I like this figure a lot, and I can go ahead and tell you I'm gonna be getting this one. Partially just because I do think it looks good on the whole, and I'm a Megatron simp. But I don't know, man, it's just, it kind of comes back to that thing that I've been harping on for a while. It's just like, oh look, it's so heavily G1 based, like this is basically just G1 but with a lot of detail. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, it just makes for a much less interesting design to me. Like, so many people are already just like, oh, it's the best live action Megatron design, it's what it should have always been, blah blah blah. Shut up. For me, this is at the bottom, maybe the middle. I have to really think about it in terms of live action Megatron designs. At the very least, for me, Revenge of the Fallen and the 2007 design are way better than this, sorry. But anyway, getting into the figure itself, I like the robot mode a good bit. I do feel like the legs kind of take up a lot of the volume. I don't know, I just feel like he's very leggy. Then something about the crotch looks weird. Anyway, I find the fusion cannon to look odd too, because the back end is pretty big, but then the front end is just a skinny tube. I don't know, that just doesn't really do it for me. Plus, apparently you can configure it in different ways. Some people are speculating that you can have it plugged into the back and kind of replicate the barrel of the gun on the back of G1 Megatron. The colors here though, you know, I do like me some silver and gray, so I think that looks fine. The bits of red look good here and there. I like a lot of the design features. I think the head looks pretty solid. I'm not the biggest fan of the head design itself, especially what we see on the art. I do think the face looks pretty weird, if I'm being completely honest. But overall, this looks like a solid robot mode. No real kibble or anything. Looks like the hands are double jointed, which is kind of a surprise. And something that was a big surprise here is the fact that he's a triple changer. He turns into both a Cybertronian jet and tank, and apparently this just comes from the idea of kind of keeping with the original intent of this to be a Michael Bay prequel, that they were like, you know, should we reference the first movie or the second movie? Of course, for me, it's like, why not reference the first movie since it would be before it? But you know, the whole Cybertronian jet and tanks there. And then they had 2 full designs commissioned, which I think look pretty damn cool. Now, of course, the 2 modes we got on the toy just don't look like those. But overall, I think they're okay. The tank mode's a bit chunky. It kind of reminds me of the third-party Mega Tank figure and the Revenge of the Fallen Leader class tank. But hey, to me, it looks like a Cybertronian alien tank, so it works. A lot of people complain about the jet mode, and I can definitely see it. It does look a bit incomplete, but you know, Cybertronian modes for me, the more abstract looking, the better. So it still kind of works for me as a weird jet thing. So overall, I do like this Bumblebee movie Megatron, even though it, and by extension the Rumble from the concept art, kind of makes me squint my eyes a little bit, because I'm like, could have done some other stuff with this, like things that actually appeared in the movie. But hey, it is what it is, I suppose. But tell me, which of these reveals did you like the most? And which of these are you planning to get? What figures were you disappointed by? And how do you feel about this whole concept art thing going forward? And what concept art designs from the movies would you like to see going forward? Let me know down in the comments. Before we go, I'd like to thank Austin Gillis, currently the only member of my highest tier on Patreon, so thank you. And as always, I'd like to give a big thanks to everyone for watching, and have a good one.